Welcome back to Short Thoughts with Mary. Today is a different episode, more so in the fact of we're talking about relationships, but it's not in the sense of dating or anything like that. It's friendships. I had the thought of what makes a good friend. And for everybody, I feel like it's a little bit different depending on who you are and who you talk to and almost kind of what their life is like. So if you talk to somebody who's single and is a big club goer and likes to party and all of that, you would say a good friend for them would be somebody that A, keeps them safe when they're out and about, goes with them, watches over them, makes sure they get home, make sure that they're not drinking too much, that they're safe in any environment, that they're not making stupid decisions on who they talk to and all that sorts of things. And then for somebody who's in a relationship, you would say a good friend is somebody that helps them through the relationship without being basically the third person in the relationship. You would also say somebody that keeps them grounded. You know, when they do wrong, you're not there saying, yeah, he's trash, go get him. You're in the background saying, well, it's probably good if you think about it from his side because A, B, or C. You're keeping them well-rounded and not just feeding the ego. Some would also say if you're religious, you would keep them in the faith. I'm a Christian, like I've said, and with my Christian friends, I like to talk about God and I like to talk about, what that means to me and what it should mean to them and stuff like that. But with friends that are less religious, obviously, I would love for them to be Christian and part of my faith, but I'm not going to shove it down their throat. So that a good friend for them wouldn't be for me to be like that, but I could keep them morally grounded nonetheless. So a good friend is dependent on the person. For me, I have 3 types of good friends. I have one good friend. Well, we'll say 4. That number is not a it's, etched in stone number. This could fluctuate the more I talk. There's good friend number 1. Good friend number 1 is the one that I've had since I was in middle school, who I wasn't good friends with her initially. We were friends, not good friends. And the more we grew, the closer we got. Just because of that's how life worked. And we kind of went down similar paths. And then when she went down a completely different path than me, career-wise, I still was close with her without having to try to be close with her. So that is a good friend. And she and I keep each other morally grounded. When we do wrong, we tell each other when we do wrong. Just like and that's across the board with all of my friends. When I do wrong, they all tell me I do wrong. And I hope I am good enough with them that I tell them. Normally I do. In some situations, if I don't feel as close to a friend, I won't. I'll just kind of basically say nothing. I won't egg them on either. So there's that friend who is basically is a second sister at this point. Then there is my sister who is a good friend. And that came with time. And those with siblings can understand this. Some, maybe not. Because I know some people have tricky relationships with their siblings. But with my sister, I would say when I was younger, she loved me from the beginning because I was 10 years younger than her. So when she was 10, I came around and she would dress me up and do all the girly things. And unfortunately, the older I got, the less I liked to do those girly things. And I was more so about the tomboy stuff. I liked to hang out with my brother and play video games and go out and play wall ball or dodgeball or something like that. Go play kickball with all the neighborhood kids. And of course, at that point too, the older I got, the older she got, and she was starting to get into more of high school and that kind of thing. And at that point, you kind of split away from your siblings regardless. Anyway, to fast forward, when I got past high school, because I in high school, I was the same way. I didn't want anything. I was good to my family. I don't think I was very harsh on them. And plus, we were all kind of separated anyway. We were all trying to get back together just because that's the way it was. It wasn't a divorce or anything. It was just jobs being, traveled. My dad's job traveled and all this other stuff. It was just, we weren't all together all at the same time. So in high school, when I had my friends, I liked to hang out with my friends and call it a day because that was kind of what I was left with. And I had my mom and my brothers and stuff, and I wasn't close to them. Fast forward again, though, past high school, when I got more into college and out of college, basically when I dropped out, I got really close to my sister, and she started having kids at that time. I became an aunt. I loved my nieces and nephews the moment that they came around. They were just like a toy to me. They were so fun. Still, I loved them all so much. And it was the best thing she ever did for me was make me an aunt. And I think that is what glued us together because I love babysitting. She always feels bad about asking me, but I do. I love it. And so with that, she has become more of a friend to me. She gives me advice on dating. Of course, now it's different than it was for her, even though it's only a 10-year separation. It's majorly different because now people date online. With her, people were still asking in person if they'd like to go out on a date. And she, of course, has experience with dating, so she gives me advice on that. And of course, we always talk about mom and dad when they're nuts or when they're not nuts or something like that, or about the other siblings and her kids. And we just bond over everything. And there's not really anything that I can't talk to her about. Then there's the other friend who, surprisingly, we became friends. We didn't necessarily intend to be so close, but we did. And you would say that really we were kind of on different playing fields at the time. But I became friends with her. We knew each other in high school, or knew of each other, we think. We're still not sure on that. And became friends after the fact. And one day when we got together, we talked for 4 hours, laughed for the entire 4 hours, and eventually, because it was in Panera and it was right after COVID, Panera was like, get out. So we pretty much bonded right then and there. And even though we don't talk every day, we're still fairly close. I mean, she knows most of my life and I know most of hers. Yes, we're not telling, or I guess I should say, no, we're not telling each other, something that happened right then and there. But even though we're in different stages of life and we've kind of always been with each other, we still are relatable with each other. And I'm not exactly sure why, but I love it. I love to talk to her and hang out with her. And even when we're doing nothing or even when we text, it's just a blast. So there is that friend that you don't have to see each other every day, nor do you have to talk every day, but you're still so close to them. And then there's work friends, the ones that you meet through work. And sometimes those friends are older, even double your age. And still you're somehow super close with them. They've lived through what you've lived through. They'll give you advice, but you can also bond over the fact that, something happened at work today. Then there's also the fact of sometimes the people you work with are just the people that are the most fun, surprisingly. And you get to talk to them about all different kinds of things with work and life. And like I said, because sometimes they're double your age, you can talk to them about what to do in certain situations. Or even if you're having trouble, they're able to comfort you almost in a motherly way, but you don't think of them as a mom. Anyway, all of these different types of friendships lead to so many different avenues. They lead to different connections, to different paths of life even. Sometimes they know people that you eventually start to date or become friends with them too. I heard somebody say at one point that meeting a new friend and making a new friend is a new world in your mind. So your mind's like a universe, and that new friend is that new universe, or excuse me, that new world in your universe. which is true. Because these different friends all have so many different lives, so many different things happening in there. And number one, it makes your life more interesting to have them around, which is why it's so important to have friends. Besides the fact that they keep you 9 times out of 10, they keep you grounded. But they're also there because they're entertaining. They give you, it's like a little mini series in your life. So you call up that friend and they'll tell you A, B, or C is happening. Or, in a not so fun way, they'll tell you something is happening. And you have to comfort them. You're part of their life and you need to comfort them the way they would comfort you. Now, my ground rule for every friend, even the ones, because I've had it to where I've had to break up with friends, which is a weird sentence to say, but sometimes you need to do it. And even with the friends that I have broken up with, sometimes I've hung out with them after the fact. We're friends again. And that's okay. People need time to grow. But when bad things happen to people, you show up for them. You don't duck out and call it a day and let somebody else handle it. For me, I handle something how I would hope somebody else handles it for me. So when somebody calls me and says that they had a horrible day or had some horrible thing happen, whether it's major or minor, it doesn't matter. I show up for them. I call. I'll ask if they want anything. If they call me and they're sick and they live in town, I'll ask them if they want me to bring anything. I'm happy to do it. Even if they have a husband around, I don't care. If that husband's tired, I get it. I can come and help. But the people anymore, I feel like people anymore don't know how to be a friend. I'm not saying this is a generation, but I think sometimes in general, it seems like with the phones and kind of going back to that whole thing, I feel like we were all so sucked into our little universe. We're not looking into the other worlds that are there, and we neglect all of that. And the more you neglect that friendship, the more it's going to lose its connection. Not that you have to talk every day. Like I said, there is a few friends, mainly one, that I don't talk to her every day. And I am still, I think, as close to her as I was in the beginning when she lived here. And even then, she didn't live here. And maybe that's what helped. All of this to say, go talk to your friends. Be a good friend. Mr. Roger that. And show up for people when they need showing up for. Have their back. Be a shoulder to cry on. And don't, what's his name? The Lean on Me. That whole song, have the shoulder to cry on. Be the shoulder to cry on. Don't worry about reaching out and telling people that you need help, because that's what friends are for. Friends and family. And if your family sucks, you gotta have friends. If your friends suck, you gotta have your family. And sometimes that's when people are at their worst, is when they don't have either. And so that's why, as a friend, you need to show up and ask people every now and then. You haven't talked to somebody for a while? Text them. Say, hey, is everything okay? Are you doing well? Just start out with that. And if they don't talk to you, that's on them. And this whole thing isn't meant to say, oh, go talk to the old friends you used to have that you lost contact with and, kind of ghosted. I'm not saying do that, because sometimes you're meant to lose touch with people, and those people are part of your part of your life for a season and not for a lifetime. I don't know why I was thinking about what makes a good friend, but I think it's good that every now and then we do think about that, because sometimes we're not one ourselves. And it's good to do to others what you want done to yourself, that golden rule. Text your friends. Hang out with them. It makes your life happier sometimes. And it makes their life happier. Even though you think you're a burden, as long as you're showing up for them, they'll show up for you. I'll talk to you guys next week, and I hope you have a wonderful day.